Now that could not have been an easy conversation to have. I mean, just think about it. You know, Helen Zille is known for being strong-willed, unafraid to tackle a fight. You are her boss, but she used to be your boss at some stage, and now you have to have that conversation, which led us here at Weekend Wake Up to discussing how painful it must be to tackle tough topics at home as well as at work. And that's our talking point for today, how to have a difficult conversation. In studio, I have leadership coach Helena Dolny. She has spent many years in the corporate field and now guides people in their professional and personal journeys. She has also recently written a book about death and dying. That's another topic for another day, and we're going to have her in our book feature segment. But back to the topic at hand. Helena, thank you so much for joining us and welcome. I mean, taking a look at the incident that unfolded, we're going to start there with the professional component of things. It can't be easy to bring up quite a difficult conversation with someone who's used to be your superior, I suppose. I mean, you look at the Zille and Maimane and the power dynamics there. How do you even begin such a conversation?
So I think each of them needed to accept the different status that they had. And from what Helen Zille said, it seemed as though she had some challenges with that.
And if you are, let's discuss maybe an employer-employee scenario, and you are aware of the fact that you can't be insubordinate, you need to speak with respect to your boss or what have you, and you would like to question him or her on a difficult topic. How do you do it as someone who's the employee?
So I think that in workplaces, people don't invest enough time in establishing how they're going to deal with difficult conversations when they have differences and when they have conflict. So there's leadership coach Patrick Lencioni. He has a book called The Dysfunctions of a Team and Overcoming the Dysfunctions. And he has stuff on mastering conflict. And you really need to work out beforehand, if you can. What are you going to do? What's going to be the approach when there are differences of opinion?
Is there also an internal dialogue that you need to have with yourself? Because, I don't know, some people are more confrontational than others, I assume. So you need to say to yourself, I'm going to try and bring this topic up. I can't control how they react, but I can control how I feel. I mean, what do you say to yourself?
So I think the first thing you have to do is clarify what your intention is. Do you want to settle a score, or are you looking for a positive outcome? Are you investing in the future of your working relationship or your personal relationship? The second thing you need to do is have your facts, because there's going to be questions and you want to say, this is what happened, this is how I feel about it, this is what you said. So you need your facts at hand. So like in the DA case, the fact that black support halved, and that's data. So you need your data at hand. The third thing to do before going into a difficult conversation is to center yourself. Do some breathing exercises. If your amygdala is tripping and anger is at the forefront, you're closing off the thinking part of your brain. And fourthly, in a really difficult conversation, I would have a third person present. A third person present not as a mediator, but as a facilitator of a conversation. Person who asks questions, who tries to get you both to see things from a different point of view. It's not always possible in a workplace, and sometimes you're trying to keep things very confidential between the two of you. But when things escalate to something of magnitude that is important for the whole organization, then I think having a third person present is very useful.
That's such a useful tip, actually, as you've just said. But in a situation where, suppose you're a very emotional person and you're prone to tears, etc., and you think, I don't want to confront this now because I know I'm going to have a breakdown, and then it happens again and you don't confront it then, and then a third time, a fourth time. So the question is, when is the best time to address an issue? Is it right there when you're feeling it? Do you wait a little bit? If you wait, you may postpone it, and by the time you do address it, you'll burst.
I think it's always good to sleep on things. We often feel much better the day afterwards when we've had a night's sleep. But that doesn't mean you should let it go away, because if something's recurrent, then often it festers and then it builds up, and then it's actually more difficult to deal with. And then you'd say, well, why didn't you mention it at the time? And if I'm working with people, I can say, when you're training a puppy, sorry, you rub the nose in the pee at the time.
Right then and there.
No, but I think with human beings it's different. I think you need to be in a calmer space, and learning to breathe and to take deep breaths and calm oneself before having a conversation is really important.
Is it also useful to bounce it off of someone beforehand? Because sometimes we're not very objective, I suppose. You know, we have a conflict situation there and I always feel I'm right because I know how I feel, but I don't see your position. Will it help to go to somebody else and say, this is what I'm dealing with, I'm not sure how to react, etc.? Or will that cloud your judgment depending on what that person's saying and either make the situation more flammable or it may dissipate?
I think it's really often very helpful to get a different perspective. I remember having one professional altercation, and it was very important in the community that I was working in that we resolve it. And we used a facilitated conversation. And it was wonderful because I had an insight to a different point of view and understood where the person was coming from. It didn't mean that I necessarily agreed with them, but there was real empathy and understanding. And it created shift between us, that we could work again.
I love that. And now that we've touched on the professional component, I want to discuss how to deal with difficult conversations on a more personal or private level in the home, with friends, etc. in just a moment. So those are top tips for dealing with difficult conversations. That's what we're talking about as our talking point today. Up next, having a difficult conversation with someone that you love. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, finding out how to have a difficult conversation without screaming. That's what we're doing today. No crying, no running out of the room, but confronting it. What's the best possible way? Leadership coach Helena Dolny is guiding us through this minefield, as it were. Let's talk personal relationships now, tackling the tough topics: sex, betrayal, death, money. You can throw them all in there. When it comes to people that you love, and you know, sometimes we're the most real, you know, for lack of a better word, with people that we love. There are no pretenses there because you're used to them, etc. And we can be a little bit raw and a bit rough with them at times. When you try to have a difficult conversation with someone that you care about, what's the best approach?
Again, what's your intention?
Motives.
The motive for having the conversation, that you not wanting to hurt, but you wanting to find a way of going forward. And that can be so hard, and you can feel yourself triggered. And I think breathing, I don't think I can emphasize this enough. When I'm teaching people, you know, the old-fashioned saying is count to 10. But when, you know, you've got this little amygdala at the back of your head, it's the primate brain. It's the one that triggers anger. And it takes over, and it means that you've got this creative part of the brain here that stops functioning. So there's a tool that I teach called STOP. Take a breath, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath, 2, 3, 4, and then breathe out. Now, it's really hard to do that when you're in the middle of a conversation, but it's really important because otherwise that emotion can take over, and then you hear yourself saying things that you might regret that you didn't want to say.
You can't take back.
You can't take back.
You can't take back.
They were said.
Now, does it help to start by, you know, sugarcoating things, or to start with a compliment? So, for example, if I want to say, I hate your cooking, and to say, you know, I appreciate the effort that you put in to making meals, and I think that's commendable. However, I dislike your cooking, etc., etc. So does it help to try and, you know, start out with a compliment at first?
So I wouldn't call it sugar cake coating. I would call it acknowledging the good.
Okay.
So that exactly what you said. I appreciate that you are cooking.
So it will help the situation a little bit.
Yes, because what happens when you go into criticism is that you trigger the angry part of your brain, and you trigger the amygdala, well. You trigger a response of defensiveness. And, you know, you probably have performance appraisals here, and yours are probably really good because you're talented and you've done well.
Oh, thank you.
And then there'll be but what you need to, yes. And we're human, and when we are going home, we remember the but. We don't remember all the good things, but in actual fact, the good things are needed for the balance. And the good things are needed to be able to hear the criticism without being defensive. If you're telling me, this is what you do well, this is what you do well, this is what you do well, then I can take on board, and this is what would make you even better if you got better at it.
Now, what if you're having that conversation with a very difficult recipient or respondent? So it's a teenager right in the midst of adolescence. She or he is acting out, or it's a partner that really is not playing their part in this relationship, but there's no reciprocity in terms of your calmness and how you've counted to 10. How do you deal with that?
So you've got everybody's different. So you're going to have to adjust as to who it is that you're talking about. But there are conversations where you find you're cycling. You find that you're doing laps, that things are being repeated. You're not actually, it doesn't seem as though you're moving anywhere. And I think at that point you kind of say, should we take a break? Can we return to this another time? I remember there's a particular technique called time talk. You get 3 minutes, I get 3 minutes. You get 3 minutes, I get 3 minutes. It's really interesting because when we're talking, quite often we call it that you're not actually listening, you're thinking about
your
what
response,
you're going to say.
yes.
So we call it listening for reply instead of listening to create and ignite. So there's a difference between listening to reply and really listening to take on board what's being said. And so the 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 minutes. So here I am at work, I'm facilitating a conversation between two direct reports who've had a fallout, and they've said, I never want to work with him again. Never, ever, over my dead body, don't want to work with him again.
Sure.
Right? And it's a team, We need to resolve this. So there's this 3 minutes, and we've put an hour in our diaries. 60 minutes of this back, forth, and you're not allowed to interrupt. So you really have to engage. And I get to the 60 minutes, and it seems to me that we haven't resolved stuff, but everybody's got the next meeting in their diary. So we go off. And then I write to both of them and say, when are we going to resume? And I get back a response and say, it's okay. There's shift.
Wow.
Something happened.
Really?
It's okay. But on other occasions, it's been, let's take a break and let's revisit this another day, because you're letting things settle, you're letting people digest stuff. And I presume that's what Maimane and Zille had to do. They had to take breaks.
Yeah, because, you know, it's very important that we are understood. I think we become very frustrated when you're misunderstood and people don't acknowledge how you feel, which I suppose is also the importance of confronting issues. I mean, sometimes I'm one of those people who doesn't want to rock the boat and just let it be. You know, you don't want to have any disturbance of the peace. But it's very important that you do say what is on your heart and on your mind as well, and you approach these difficult conversations.
If you leave it, if you don't want to rock the boat, then it could build up for festering. But there are different situations. I mean, betrayal was one of your questions, hey? And when I was writing my book before Forever After, and there was one person that I had a conversation with, and they said that their partner used to have affairs, and they didn't mention anything. And they said to me, they played the long game. So people make their own choices as well.
Goodness, I could speak to you for hours. I can see how you do this as a profession. I feel like I'm on a couch and you're counseling me here. Helena, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much. Such wise words, and I hope you have benefited from this conversation as well. And thank you for joining us, and thank you for your time. Let's leave it there for the time being.